Wedding Bells Ahead by Arleta Richardson. Chapter 3. Augusta Refuses an Offer. Augusta was bustling about the kitchen when I got home, and I waited for her version of the day's news. She said nothing about the Graysons, however, and I settled down to work on my lessons for the next day. When supper was ready, I cleared my books away and set the table for us. Augusta talked about the weather, the washing, the eggs, and the dress material she had found. Finally, I ventured to ask, "Did you take bread to the Graysons this morning?" "Of course I did. Said I would, didn't I?" No other comment was forthcoming. This wasn't like Augusta, and I probed further. "Did you invite them to church?" "Certainly. They'll be there Sunday." "The children said their parents question whether there is a God," I blurted, forgetting my silent disapproval of Augusta's love for spreading news. "Bosh," Augusta replied. "No one is born believing there's no God. That's something they had to learn, and if they learned it, they can unlearn it." "But we're Christians, Augusta," I said. "Shouldn't we try to convince them that they're wrong?" "Hitting them over the head with the Bible isn't going to prove that we have the truth," Augusta declared. "We have to live like Christians." "Augusta is absolutely right," I said to Len when we discussed it later. "But I don't understand why the Graysons would consent to come to church if they are truly agnostics." "I think they want to belong to the community," Len replied. "If it's the custom of the people here to attend church, they'll attend church. They don't intend to be convinced of the error of their ways. We'll just pray that there will be enough of God in our lives to cause them to question their beliefs." "I met Mr. Grayson in town today," Mr. Williams told us. "Seems like a pleasant young man. Says he's interested in buying land here and developing homesteads." "There hasn't been a new family in the North Branch area since the Laughtons settled here more than 20 years ago," Mrs. Williams commented. "I don't know whom he intends to sell those homesteads to." "He could sell one to me if I had the money to pay for it," Len said wistfully. "It's a good thing Mabel knew I didn't have anything but a hole in my pocket when she agreed to marry me. But we'll have a home," he declared as he hugged me. "We'll have a nice home." "I never doubted it," I said. "Anywhere you are will be a nice home for me." "My grandmother Gage has come to live with us," Joel informed me one morning. "She's awful old, but Ma says she knows more than all the rest of us put together." "Old people can have a lot of wisdom," I replied. "Where has your grandmother been living?" "With Pa's sister, but Grandma likes the country better than the city. She says they have trolley cars that will knock you right down if you don't watch them. I'd like to live in the city." "Pa says North Branch is going to be a city one day," Daniel said. "He found a good place for a lumber mill. He says you can—" "Daniel," Serena interrupted. "Hush, you talk too much." In the weeks that followed, Serena and Elsie were inseparable. I was pleased that they got along so well together. The Graysons continued to attend church regularly, and Len reported that Jerome Grayson had stopped by several times to talk with him. "We discuss a variety of things," Len replied when I asked what they talked about. "He's interested in the economy and the future of North Branch. He doesn't think we've done all we could to utilize the resources of this area." "Do you ever mention spiritual things?" "You mean, do I preach to him?" Len laughed. "No, he knows I believe that God still has a hand in his creation and cares for individuals. Jerome admits that some unknown power rules the world, but he's convinced that man is in charge of his own fate. We don't argue about it." I went home almost every weekend because of my concern for Ma. Len understood, though I knew he would have preferred that I stay. "I enjoy having you here and appreciate your coming," Ma told me in late September. "But it's not necessary for you to look after me. I'm doing just fine." "I know you are, Ma, but should you be canning tomatoes?" I asked. "What else are we going to do with them?" "I'm afraid you'll get too tired," I replied. "If I get tired, I know where the chair is," Ma said. "Honestly, Mabel, you fuss like an old mother hen. Don't you have any problems at school to occupy your mind?" "Not really," I replied. "Things are going rather smoothly. It's easier when you know the children and have some idea what to expect from them." "I wouldn't become too complacent if I were you," Ma warned me.
Life has a way of taking unforeseen turns when you aren't looking.
I arrived home from school one afternoon to find Augusta staring out the window of my room. I peered over her shoulder at the backyard and the woods beyond it.
"What are we looking for?"
I asked. "We aren't looking for anything," Augusta replied. "I'm wondering what that Mr. Grayson is looking for."
"Mr. Grayson? Is he back there?"
Augusta nodded. "Has been all afternoon." At that moment, Jerome Grayson emerged from the woods and walked purposefully toward the house. "Mercy, he's coming here!" Augusta smoothed her apron and started for the front door. "What do you suppose he wants?" I knew that unless the earth opened up before supper time, I would hear every word that passed between them. So I spread the day's papers out on the desk and settled down to correct them. But I didn't have to wait for Augusta's report. Their voices carried clearly to my room. "Won't you sit down, Mr. Grayson?" "Thank you. It's a lovely day, isn't it?" "It is," Augusta replied. "But you didn't come to tell me that, did you?" "No," he said. "As a matter of fact, I came to ask if you know who owns the wooded area behind your place." "I do, of course. My brother owned all the land from here to the river." "Owned?" "He died in the war between the states." "Oh, I'm sorry," Mr. Grayson hesitated. "Then I suppose the property passed to his family?" "He didn't have any family but me," Augusta declared. "He never married." "Then you own the land?" Mr. Grayson persisted. "I suppose I do," Augusta replied, "though I've never seen a deed to it. Now, why is it that you are so interested in the place?" "I'd like to buy it, Miss Harris. I'm prepared to offer you a good price for it." This was obviously an unexpected thought to Augusta, for she didn't reply for several seconds. "My grandfather claimed this land in 1790, Mr. Grayson. He built this house. There's been no one but Harrises here since then, and there won't be as long as I'm alive." I could tell that as far as Augusta was concerned, the conversation was closed, but Mr. Grayson was undaunted. "But, Miss Harris, you've no one to leave it to. You could live comfortably the rest of your life on what I'm prepared to give you." "I would not live comfortably anywhere but in my own house," Augusta snapped. "You are wasting your time, Mr. Grayson. I've no intention of selling." "If you should change your mind, I'll be happy to talk with you again," Mr. Grayson replied amiably. "Good day, Miss Harris." When I heard the door close firmly behind him, I ventured out to the kitchen. "The idea!" Augusta spluttered. "Wanting to buy a person's home right out from under them. He has a place of his own out there that he doesn't even work. What could he want of another one?" Daniel's remark about a lumber mill came to mind, but I thought it might not be the time to mention it. At any rate, Augusta had already made her decision. Len admitted that he knew about the offer when I spoke to him. "Jerome has an eye for the future," Len said. "He can envision a successful mill back there. Augusta's land borders the river, and there must be several thousand acres of timber that has never been touched. If she could be persuaded to sell, she'd be a wealthy woman."
"You mean you think Augusta should give up her home too?" I asked in surprise. "Where would she go?"
"I don't think she should do anything she doesn't want to do," Len replied. "I know her roots run pretty deep, but a lumber mill would bring a lot of jobs and new people to the area."
"There must be other stands of timber," I protested. "Isn't there some government land he could get?"
"Not located on the river and the railroad. Augusta has the ideal spot."
"Why do you suppose he didn't tell her what he wanted the land for?" I wondered. "Not that it would have made much difference, I'm afraid."
"I'm sure he'll approach Augusta again," Len said. "He's not one to give up easily. I have a feeling he'll get what he wants."
"Len, he wouldn't do anything crooked to get the property, would he? After all, he isn't a Christian."
"I've known some people who call themselves Christian that I wouldn't trust behind a lace curtain," Len replied. "But no, I believe Jerome Grayson is an honest man. If he does get that land, it won't be by deceit." For the time being, the matter was closed. Mr. Grayson seemed to have accepted Augusta's refusal and turned to other concerns. For her part, Augusta continued to monitor the affairs of the community as fall reluctantly slipped toward winter. End of Chapter 3.